Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Kaleidocast episode 101, or is that 100A, or 100.5? I'm not entirely sure. But by the way, I'm Steve Tudor.
And I'm Andy Lewis. Hello.
Hello, this is not a normal episode, because it's just the two of us, and we're going to do like a little mini episode, because you went to UK Games Expo this last weekend, and I did not.
That is correct.
Basically your chance to talk bollocks for as long as I keep pressing the record button pressed.
And don't cut me out in the post-edit, you mean?
That as well, yeah, that as well.
I'm still at your mercy, mate. I could talk for 3 hours and it still won't make the cut.
That is true.
So, well, it's my time to shine. Now, I could speak for Rory as well, because, as you say, Steve, I was really pretty much the only member of PHC to be at the Expo this year. Although Rory did make it to the press preview on the Thursday night, he also got there on the Sunday, but he was with his 2 children, so it wasn't exactly a normal press expo for him. But he did, to be fair to him, he did play a few sort of kids games. So yeah. We might hear about those, I suppose, next time he's with us and recording, because he did play a couple of them, and they were pretty good, to be fair. But I'll let him talk about those. So
fair enough.
What I did was the lot. So I was there for the full 3 days with the press preview on the Thursday night. And I was there with Alora as well. So I did have someone else to sort of play games and banter off as well, which is quite good. So Alora really enjoyed herself as well. So as a kind of a summary, obviously everything was in sort of post-pandemic lockdown. So everyone was in masks. There was sort of hand sanitizer everywhere, and to be fair, everyone obeyed the rules. I didn't see anybody sort of flaunting them. There are occasionally people with sort of masks just under their nose, but they sort of put them, back up pretty straight away. So it was really, really quite safe. I have since done a COVID test and I have passed with flying colours, so I'm pretty confident. I've heard on Twitter there's a few pings going off on various apps, which I guess is to be expected given so many people. But I am currently symptomless.
So it sounds like, because there was a bit of a U-turn, wasn't there? There was, when the government first announced that basically they can't enforce mask wearing, Games Expo made this weird announcement that was along the lines of, well, we can't enforce it, so we're not going to make people wear masks. And there was quite a bit of a backlash, and I got the impression there was quite a few exhibitors didn't go, and then UK Games Expo did a bit of a U-turn and said, yes, we'd like you to wear masks, there'll be hand sanitizers, but I get the feeling that quite a few of the exhibitors that cancelled didn't then come back.
I don't know about the exhibitor side of things. It would not surprise me. But yes, I have heard that there was definitely a U-turn, because masks were they weren't enforced, but it was basically, if you don't have a mask, you're not getting in. So once you were sat down at tables and eating or playing games in the free gaming area, then you didn't have to wear a mask. It was a bit like a restaurant or a pub. But if you're walking around or doing demonstrations, it was masks at all times with sanitizer.
Yeah.
And the way you got into it was basically you needed to prove basically you weren't infectious or ill. So either the NHS app that proved you had a COVID pass or a recent PCR test, stuff like that. So basically prove that you're not, sick and dying, and you'll be okay. And they did that every 2 days. So you could get in on the Thursday night and the Friday with kind of one. They'd give you a wristband that said you're good. And then on the Saturday, they did another one to make sure that, the next 2 days were good. So to be fair, they did operate a fairly decent ship. And again, everyone complied with it. There was no argy-bargy that I saw, and everyone just kind of wandered around. It was a bit crap wearing a mask for sort of 4 days straight, but, hospital staff do it 24 hours a day. So, I'm pretty sure we can manage. And we did for, 8 hours a day. So it was perfectly fine. I even bought new masks for the event. So some nice, sort of sexy, sort of rewashable ones, because I'd lost the ones I got given by work. I don't know where the hell they've gone, but got some nice new sexy ones. So they were good. And as a kind of a size-wise, I mean, the last one we went to in 2019 was enormous, because that was in the entirety of Hall 1, about 2/3 of Hall 2, and then a bunch of extra sort of gaming space at the back of that. And then Hall 3 had all of the tournament stuff in. Yeah. Well, this year it was about 2/3 to 3/4 of Hall 2. And that was it.
Right.
Well, I lied. There was some free gaming. There was actually a full hall of free gaming space kind of next to Hall 2. So it must have been Hall 3, I guess, if that's not around the corner. either that or Hall 2 gets cut in half, doesn't it? So it's the other half of Hall 2 is basically totally free gaming space with a few food stalls inside, so we didn't have to go outside for food or anything like that, unless you wanted to. And then towards the back of the hall, sort of beyond all the exhibitors, there were a bunch of picnic tables and stuff as well, so you could just sort of sit down, take a break, and obviously take your mask off if you wanted to because you were sat down. So it was obviously massively smaller than previous events. But it was still pretty good because of the size and obviously the reduced number of people that were there. It still felt like there was stuff going on. There was still a buzz in the air. You know, you could still hear the chatter of people. It wasn't like a library. There's a lot of people talking about moving around. Saturday was still the busiest day. So as a kind of they'd also widened the corridors as well because obviously there were slightly fewer exhibitors, so there's a bit more space to move around, which is quite nice. So the Saturday, I think, as a sense of scale and busyness, the Saturday felt more like sort of the previous Fridays, if that makes sense. So in previous years, you know, Fridays slightly quieter, you can a bit more move around. The Saturday this year felt a bit like that. So there's a lot more people there, but it was still enough to move around. Sunday was very, very quiet, but still enough. You know, there was still a lot of people there. Every demo table was basically full. So there were at no point where, you know, it wasn't a desert. So it was really good. It was really well attended, and there was a good feeling in the air. Lots of exhibitors, lots of demos, lots of sellers as well. Although some of their stalls are slightly diminished. You know, people like Zatu and Travelling Man, Board Game Extras, that sort of thing. They were all there, but they were just smaller, basically. Apart from Firestorm, they were massive. Huge, because they were basically where Games Law usually was, like kind of just on the immediate left as you go in. But that was Firestorm cards rather than Games Law. They were further out, but there was sort of traditionally big stand there, so that was good, and they were mobbed the entire weekend. So yeah, generally speaking, really, really good show, really good atmosphere, and yeah, at no point did it really feel like I was gonna, you know, catch Galloping Knobrot and die. So it was all fine.
So, what did you see then? So, what? And you've got a big list of things here. Now, is this including stuff you played during the weekend and at the press preview, or is this just a mix of everything? Is it?
I haven't included anything from the press preview here at all. So this is all for the 3 days that I was there. Yeah. Although there's a lot of overlap. I did see stuff at the press preview that I then went on to play. So
because what I've tended to find in the past is you see stuff at the press preview that you never actually see in the halls
because you can't find it.
You can't find it afterwards, or you swear some things. And I'm adamant of this, that some things are in the press preview actually don't get shown at the show. They're quite literally press preview stuff.
I think you're probably right.
So was there anything there that really caught your eye? And I don't mean just for you, but like something you looked at and went, ooh, John will like that, or Steve will be all over that.
No. I think being brutally honest. Well, I mean, there was stuff that I wanted to see, which thankfully was there, which I'll cover during the spiel coming up. But the good thing about the size of it was that I could see everything in the 3 days.
Yeah.
So, and it was a lot more relaxed. So, I mean, in previous years, you know, I've not left before 6 o'clock every day, because we're still doing media, still doing interviews, still talking to people where, you know, the hall's kind of shutting and we're sort of waving the pass going, yeah, we're just talking to them. Oh, okay, fine. Whereas this year, we left early every day.
Yeah, okay.
Not because it was crap or anything like that, just because we thought, well, we know we've got 3 days to cover a bunch of stuff that we know we've been able to see, just about. So it made it much more leisurely. We weren't knackered, which was quite nice. But there was a lot of overlap with the press preview and the main event. So I don't think there was anything I saw in the press preview that I didn't see during the show itself. But in terms of stuff that did catch my eye, Free League were there. I was always intending to go and say hello to those guys anyway, just because, you know, they were there. There was a game called Bees, actually, which did catch my eye. I didn't end up playing it, weirdly. But one of the board game guys, Matt, in our Beauty board game group did buy it, so I'm sure I'll be able to play it at some point in the future. It's a fairly small game. It's not usually my standard demographic of dry, boring Euro, but it did look interesting and colourful and stuff, so I'll report back on that once I've played it in future. I had a really good chat with the guys from Asmodee in the press preview, and they told me that Kemet, kind of second edition, is basically coming out. It is available now to buy, and that's essentially what they've done is taken, almost like what Fantasy Flight did with Twilight Imperium 4th edition, they basically took the old version, squeezed all the expansions into one big box, and tweaked the rules a bit.
Is that Blood and Sand?
I can't remember if it's got a subtitle or not.
It was on Kickstarter about 18 months, 2 years ago, maybe. So it sounds like it's coming to retail now.
Yes, definitely is. So there's like a nice big chunky box full of Kemet. As I said, they've changed the map. They've changed a few of the rules, although the guy did say the rulebook's still shit because it's got... because it's still got like section headers and like it reads like a legal document, section 3.4.4 this
right,
bit, and he's like, yeah, that's really crap. And I'm like, if you want it rewritten, I've got previous. He says, we might take you up on that. But other than that, so yeah, Kemet caught my eye. Actually, there was one chap whose name escapes me, who was basically designing an RPG and a tabletop sort of war game type thing, who makes absolutely stunning miniatures, which I had to really, really resist buying one, because there's one that made this sort of demon that's probably about 12 inches tall. That miniature alone was £125. Solid resin, really, really lovely cast, multi-part thing, and I really, he was like, yeah, you want to buy it? It'll be a labour of love. He's like, shush, stop it, don't say anything. But he had fantastic things. A lot of his stuff had been painted by Angel Giraldez, which is one of the reasons. Yeah, it caught my eye. I was like, wow, this is really good. Is this Angel? Yeah, it's Angel. Yeah, okay. You can just tell. It's all airbrushed. It's all smooth as a baby's arse. You're like, yep, there you can tell. But yeah, so that did catch my eye. Unfortunately, I didn't buy any of this stuff because I thought,
what was that called?
The publisher is Cerberus Studios. So the game is Celestial Affinity.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
Yes, and there's a fucking great demon. It's massive and it looks amazing.
Yeah, blimey.
Yeah. They're really pretty. So yes, they are making a game called Celestial Affinity, which is kind of an RPG on one side that you can play with the miniatures they got, and then they're making another sort of side of that game, which is essentially a tabletop battle game.
Yeah.
So,
right, okay.
Yeah, it's rather pretty. So their stand was really quite impressive. They had like lava flows with demons and stuff all over it. It did look good. So yes, that they caught my eye. So having said no, nothing caught my eye. Yeah, that caught my eye.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that was really cool. And then yeah, they had a really good stand during the show. So in terms of the actual show itself, we did get to see, thankfully, quite a few games. Now, I will say I was a little disappointed, but I understand why it's the case, that people like Frank West from City of Games weren't there, or CGE didn't have a presence, or Paul Grogan. I didn't see him. He might have been there, but I didn't see him.
No, I don't think he was there. No, I saw his live stream something else over the weekend.
Yeah,
so obviously not.
I guess he was probably busy. And, you know, some other British publishers there. I fully appreciate why they probably weren't there, because they either were pulled out and then decided not to bother going, or they just decided it wasn't safe. Perfectly understandable. It's just a bit disappointing, because it's always nice to see what they've got. Always nice to catch up with them. So, but again, fully understandable why they weren't there. But we did see one of our big friends of the show, Alley Cat Games. I spent a lot of time with Ali Cat talking to Cesar and his team there. They had a great stand right by the front door, actually. They had a perfect position for them. So you walk in, literally just to the left, they've got their sort of bright blue stand. We did get to play through Eternal Palace, which you and I went through, God, it must be 18 months ago now.
It's probably about a year ago, because it wasn't long after lockdown. It was during lockdown, so I reckon probably about a year ago.
Okay, and then we because that was on either Tabletop Simulator or the other one.
Yeah.
And we both enjoyed it. I really did. So I've now played the physical copy of it. It's still not quite ready, but it's nearly there. And again, really enjoyed it. Alora really enjoyed it. So yes, that was good to see it physically in copy. Also played Tinner's Trail, which I've had my eye on and really should have backed on Kickstarter, but didn't for reasons best known to myself. I don't know why. That's about basically tin mining and copper mining in the 19th century in Cornwall. So, the most exciting of subjects. But it's a game by Martin.
Is it a pole dart game? Is it? You have to go, crumb pole dart, Mr. Pole Dart, quick! There's trouble down mine.
Trouble down mine. Yes, it's all flooding. We got to get old Seth out. No, it's a Martin Wallace game.
Yep.
So you can tell it's got feelings of brass in there, but it's nowhere near as complicated as brass. It's kind of brass light. So the idea is that you're basically buying up mines and then extracting the resources and then selling them off for profit, which you can then invest to gain victory points. There's a bit of a bidding aspect of it. There's an upgrading element of it with limited levels of upgrade. So there's a bit of a fight for which upgrades you can actually apply. So and then you can interlink some of your mines to get sort of benefits. So and it's very much a competitive game. So if somebody gets in your way, it's going to be quite annoying. So yeah, don't play it if you if you like playing nice. No, it's not playing nice at all. But yeah, we both really enjoyed it. So I'll be doing a full review of it at some point in the future once I've played it through and written it down properly. But yeah, we really enjoyed that. So that's Tinner's Trail. We managed finally to get a game of Dice Theme Park as well. So yes, it took us Friday, Saturday, and half of Sunday to actually get round to actually getting onto the table to get a demo because it was just mobbed. Nice problem for Cesar to have, but yeah, it was really difficult because everything was just full. But Dice Theme Park is obviously what we got showed after we played Eternal Palace last time. But we saw it in like black and white and just numbers on cards. It was like super duper basic alpha. But now this has got much more developed. There's all the full hexagons, there's the dice and stuff. It's still in beta prototype, but it's enough of the game there to give you an idea. So it's very similar, or at least familiar, I think is probably the best way to describe it. It's familiar compared to Dice Hospital, but it's different enough to make it a very different game. So in this, rather than you'll buy a new ride like you'd buy a room in Dice Hospital, but the idea is instead of patients being treated in one room and then moving back to triage, you basically have the dice are your people, and they're the visitors to your park, and they wander around the park. So they go on a ride, and then they have an excitement level, which is the number on the die, and then they will move off the ride that they've just experienced and move to a different ride and tick down one. So whenever they get to an excitement level of 1, they leave. So obviously it's in your interests to try and get them around as many rides as they can and keep their excitement level up to score as many points as you can. But on top of that, the different colours of dice go on different colours of rides. So there's a kind of a pathfinding element as well within the game. So it's actually slightly more complicated than Dice Hospital.
Right. It's what we kind of expected, really.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a big surprise compared to what we expected, but it is very good, and I did enjoy it and won the demo. Just throw that out there, even though it was only one round, but still. It's very clever, so you've got a couple of cards which allow you to do certain things at the start of the game. It also determines turn order, etc., etc. So there's familiarity, but it's suitably different to be a different game, and I do think John would be very, very good at it, actually, because he seems to get the hang of these games quite quickly. So, but yes, very, very good. Very glad we played it, and very glad we actually sort of stuck it out and actually hung around for a demo. Another couple of games we did play were Tinder Blocks, which is a really tiny tin-based game. It's a dexterity game. It's basically just building campfires, but you're basically using a set of tweezers to put blocks on. You draw a card. It shows you what blocks to build. You put them on with your weakest, non-dominant hand, using a set of tweezers, and then build upon a stack. And then, obviously, if the stuff falls over, then obviously you lose. There's another game called Kitten, which they sold out of, but that's another dexterity game. So if you remember Dimension from years ago with that pyramid of balls, you draw a card out, you've got to build the balls up in a certain... It's a bit like that. So you draw a card out and it tells you which of these cats to put in a certain order, and the first person to build them up wins the card, basically. The first person to win 3 cards wins. Dead simple game, but great fun. And absolutely battered Dolores at that as well. She's like, I had no idea you were so good at dexterity games. Yes, I am. So that was really good as well. And then Paper Dungeon was on display there, but we didn't get to play it. But I should be able to review it at some point in the future. That's a roll and write, or a dungeon scrawler, as it's marketed, which I thought was quite clever.
Okay, I like that one.
So we didn't get to play that, but we do like the look of it. So I was telling me that they had a bunch of shipping issues, which everybody's having at the moment, I suppose. So they air freighted a bunch of copies over specifically for the stand. I think they air freighted something like 75 copies. And he thought, we're never going to sell all of these, with the number of people there. They sold 50 of them on the first day. I think by lunchtime on Saturday they were completely out of them. So yeah, they did really, really well. So that was Alley Cat. So lots going on there. They had one of the biggest stands there, to be fair. So I think it's like 4 stands worth, of that sort of size. If the smaller ones only a few meters wide. So that was a good stand. We spent quite a bit of time at Phalanx as well. I always do. Although their stand this time was only a couple of tables, but it was big enough for what they were showing off. So they showed off Successors, which is kind of I'm not going to say a follow-up or a sequel to Hannibal, which I got a couple of years ago, but it's in the same sort of vein. But the James, the guy that was demoing, essentially said it was like multiplayer Hannibal.
Okay, because Hannibal was 2-player.
That's correct. Yeah. So it basically makes that game more accessible. So again, another area control, military-based, Roman-type sort of thing. So it did look good. I've got it on the way. It is actually shipping from Kickstarter at the moment, but it's not turned up yet because they've had all kinds of weird and wonderful problems. Again, like everybody has. So that's on its way. They've got a new game called Brett Walder in development at the moment, or as I call it, Brunhilde. I keep calling it Brunhilde. It's not. It's Brett Walder, which is based in kind of Anglo-Saxon England. So you're essentially building up your clans and you're building up your little sort of areas and stuff, and you get randomly invaded by Vikings throughout the game, which obviously ruined your day. I don't know any more about it than that. It wasn't being demoed. It was just kind of there looking pretty, and it does look pretty. So hopefully that'll be hitting Kickstarter at some point in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. Nancy Narkin was on demo as well, but we've already talked about that in the past and played it. Yeah. But a game that we really wanted to play and thankfully did was a game called Rocket Men, which is another Martin Wallace game. So he has been quite busy.
Okay.
And
so I'm assuming then this is a game about Elton John or playing the piano.
Obviously, yes. And if you wear a set of star-shaped specs, you win the game straight away. No, Rocket Men is, in fact, I keep calling it SpaceX, but it is essentially about commercial space flights. So it's not, it's not mentioned directly in the game, but essentially you're playing as someone like Elon Musk or Richard Branson or that lot, so Jeff Bezos, all these sort of people, and you are essentially trying to run missions into space, so via either Earth's atmosphere, Moon, or Mars. Comparatively more difficult to do as you sort of progress through the game. The further you go, the more points you'll score. So the idea is that it's a deck builder primarily, which is how you do your primary actions, and then there's a push your luck element of the game about when you actually launch your mission. So you need a sort of certain amount of resources to be able to do so, and then when you do it, there's another deck that you'll draw a certain number of cards from, and there's a number of spaces on a track that will get you to Earth's atmosphere, then to the Moon, then to Mars. You've got to say where you're going to, and then these cards will have a number between 0 and 4 on, so you've got to advance a number of spaces along that track to get to your target. You can bail out at any point, but it will cost you a certain number of cards depending on when you bail. And of course, then you've got to sort of turn these cards over. If you get to your target, you get your points. If not, the whole mission fails. You've got to start again. So, nice push your luck as well. And one of the highlights for us was one of the guys we were playing against, what was his name? Tom, ran a fantastic mission to Mars. I got 2 spaces away from it. Like, oh no, he's going to get like 10 points. He needs a card with a 2 or more on it, draws a 1. The whole thing falls over, and there's a massive scream. It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So then I followed up with the next turn and got there. Ha! But yeah, no, we all really enjoyed that. It's about 30 quid as well. It's really quite cheap. There's not a huge amount to the game, but it's out now. It's been out for a little while, actually. I've never heard of it before. But we really, really enjoyed it. Really great little game, really easy teach, and a fantastic, fun game. So yes, Phalanx have done well there. Obviously, I went to see Free League, obviously. Had a good natter with those guys a couple of times, actually. They were...
So... It wasn't the guys actually from Free League themselves that were there, was it? It was the guys from the Effect podcast. Is that right?
That is correct, yes. And I have one of their business cards here, which I'm going to listen to. So, yes, I'm going to give them a bit of a listen to. They were there promoting it. Obviously, they've played it. They are currently playing Forbidden Lands. They're currently playing Coriolis. They're currently playing, well, all of them, really. And they're going through... Yeah. They've just played Colonial Marines. So the campaign or the cinematic scenario that's come with the Colonial Marines Operations Manual.
It's not a cinematic scenario.
Oh.
It's a little mini campaign.
There you go. See, I've not read it yet, so there you go. You know more than I do. But as the DM, that's your job. But they said they really, really enjoyed it. Apparently, they got into an argument about something about being in Overwatch, which I suspect is obviously going to be a new mechanic that's been introduced.
No, Overwatch is already in there.
Is it? And we just never did it?
Is,
okay.
Yeah. You just never did it, no, because you guys don't think tactically.
No, we don't. No, just kick the dolls in and see what happens. So yeah, apparently they got into a bit of an argument about Overwatch. It turns out, one of them had to rescind it, and it was all fine. But they really enjoyed it. They really loved it, and they thought it was an excellent campaign. So there you go. Free League did win 2 show awards. One for just showing up.
No, they won Best RPG for Vaesen.
That's right, yes.
And they won Best RPG Adventure for Chariot of the Gods.
Yes, there we go. So,
and what you don't know, dear listener, is we have actually recorded the next podcast episode already, but they're going out in the wrong order. And we agree. Chariot of the Gods is probably one of the best RPG modules ever written for any system.
Damn right,
it is superb.
Absolutely superb. Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, they thoroughly deserve that. It's a really, really good. And I had because they were trying to sell me things like Symbaroom and stuff, and until I pointed out that actually it is all turning up on Monday, i.e. today when we're recording this. I had a very large box turn up this morning full of pretty much everything for Symbaroom, so that shut him up. At which point he moves on to Morkborg and Mutant Zero, which I don't have. So they were doing the sales pitch rather well. I had a flick through Morkborg, and oh my god, my sort of ordered OCD just kicked off, because that is just a mental rule book.
It's bonkers. It's beautiful, but it's bonkers.
I couldn't make head or tail of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I couldn't work out what was going on, because there's pinks and blacks and yellows. Oh, it's like a grenade went off in a paint factory. It's just nuts.
As an ordered and cohesive rulebook, it is no good. But as a work of art, it is something extraordinary, that rulebook.
Yes, it is.
It really is.
Yes, and it's really small. It's only like A5, so it's not expensive either. It's only about £20. Okay. I had a leaf through Mutant Year Zero as well, which is obviously where all of these NYZ games that we've been playing started, and that looks interesting, although I was advised that from a role-playing point of view, one of the chaps said that there's a bit of an incongruity when you've got a player and you get mutations, so you'll start off with a mutation, you'll build your character around it, and you'll go through the game. But if things go wrong, I get the impression that basically it's like if you suffer a critical hit, you can get a mutation. But the mutations you get are random, which is a little jarring when you're trying to sort of build a character around one mutation and something kicks off. So that's the only criticism that they had. But further than that, I've only sort of mooched through it. But it does look pretty fun, and it's obviously post-apocalyptic. RPGing. I'm sure we'll probably play it at some point, and it does look good. So that was Free League. They had a pretty good show by the looks of things. There's a lot of people talking to them at all times. On to other things that we mooched through. I spoke to Mark McKinnon at Dream Big Games. He was mobbed the entire show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, he had
good to hear that.
Yeah, it is. No, he had a really great show. Every time I went over to play Wardens of Wolvengrad, Wolvengrad, which is their new upcoming game. It's still in development, still in beta, but they were demoing that the whole weekend. They were really loving it. Everyone playing it really enjoyed it, from what I could tell. So every time I went over, it was always a full demo going on of that.
I was hoping you'd played this, because I'm quite interested about this one. Now, we liked Wreck and Ruin for its silliness and big guns and chaos. This Wardens of Wolvengrad is supposed to be influenced by Monster Hunter and Kingdom Death Monster. So it's supposed to take like Monster Hunter the video game and take basically a lighter approach to, say, Kingdom Death Monster, and make basically a monster hunting board game. And I'm intrigued to see if it pulls it off. It does. It's going to be interesting as well, because at the moment we've just got little cardboard cutouts. It's got some fantastic art, but all the little miniatures are basically just cardboard standy. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes from here.
Well, I did speak to Mark about it. Sadly, we didn't get a game of it because it was just chocker. But I did sort of loiter around and have a look and sort of watch how it's played. Spoke to Mark a bit about it. And it's essentially basically a boss fight game. So you've got a big beastie of some description. It was a big wild boar, giant wild boar in this case, and essentially the party, it's a cooperative game. You can choose who goes in order to try and string abilities together, that kind of thing. So probably not unlike Dark Souls, the boss fights at least, just without the choreographed finishes. And there's a sort of big map, so all the different beasties that you can take on obviously do different things and can move around. The beastie fights back and does a lot of damage, so it's a brutally hard game. But the idea is, yes, you're essentially trying to sort of take this beastie down as a kind of big boss fight at the end of a kind of an adventure sort of idea. A lot of people saw it, really enjoyed it. So yeah, a lot of, but yeah, we didn't get to play it, sadly. It's not the sort of game Laura would enjoy anyway. But I would have been interested, but sadly, yes, it was just mobbed, which is a great problem for him to have. So yeah, it looks like it's going to do well. I think I do wish him all the best in that. Next was this is actually driven by Laura. I got kind of almost frog march to the Asmodee stand, where we played Red Rising, which is the latest Stonemaier game.
Stonemaier.
Now, Alora's listened to the audiobook, so she was definitely better armed to go into this than I was, because there's a series of novels about all of this, whereas it's essentially very, if you don't know, apparently they're very similar to the Hunger Games kind of style of where you get sort of people at the bottom get pissed off and try and take on the people at the top, and there's a big sort of hoo-ha in the whole affair. But basically, there are echelons of society on Mars. The Reds are at the bottom, the Golds are at the top, and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful shit in between. And it's all about a guy who gets essentially masquerades as a Gold from the Red, and this is obviously all about the story being Red Rising. The game itself is about it's essentially a card hand manipulation game. Mechanically very simple. There are 4 columns almost that you put a card into, each one representing a certain aspect of the game. So you've got fleet command, you've got leadership, you've got helium production, and you've got institute, which basically I don't know if what thematically that represents, but it's basically control as far as I tell. And you play one of your cards, and your cards have a point value on the top. There's a kind of an ability in the middle, which is what you trigger when you put it down if it applies, and then a lot of the cards will have kind of an end game scoring condition when it's in your hand at the end of the game. And you basically put it on one of these 4 columns, do the ability if it applies, and then take a card from one of the other columns back into your hand.
Okay.
So mechanically very, very simple. And the game ends when like 3 people have got 7 each of the 7 scoring areas, basically, or 2 persons got one of them. So it rattles on. I would rattle on if AP wasn't such a big problem with it, because there's a massive deck of cards and every card is unique. So every time you get a new card, you've got to read it. So there's a lot of reading going on, and trying to sort of string different cards together is a bit of a pain in the arse. I wasn't a fan, I'm not going to lie to you. Alora thought it was okay, but she's read the book, so I guess she felt it was a bit more in keeping with what she already understood. I went in with absolutely no knowledge of the game, of the novels at all, and found it completely seamless. I'm not going to lie to you. It didn't feel like I was in a dystopia or anything like that. I was just playing cards. I felt there was very little control over what came out, especially with 4 players. It kind of suffered wingspan syndrome, where by the time the game's gone round, the market's completely changed and you've got to rethink what you're trying to do. I'm sure with more players, more plays, it would get better because you'd learn the cards a bit more. But as a first playthrough, it did not enamor me to it. So I felt it was a bit meh.
Fair enough.
Yeah, not another one that I probably will certainly not be buying, unfortunately. But so Laura thought it was okay. Me, not so much. I found it actually, honestly, quite tedious.
Oh, blimey, that bad.
Yeah, I just found it was. I mean, there was a lot of AP though. New players were playing cards. There's a lot of AP, and I was just like, I know what I'm going to do for the next 3 goes. Can you just get on with it, please? It was that problem. I was like, right, done. I'm done. Next. So yeah, I think once you're used to it, and you could play it. It'd probably rattle on quite quickly. The game's only designed to last 30 to 45 minutes, so it's not supposed to be a long game. But I did find it quite dull. Went to see James Naylor at Naylor Games. So they're the people who did Magnate, the first city, which I know Rory is expecting a copy of it very, very soon from Kickstarter. He really enjoyed that when we played it. I was less enthusiastic about it, but so be it. That's the way things go. But I thought I'll say hello, and because James has been a friend of the show, as it were. He's a very nice guy, and he's got a new game coming out called Board Games, the board game, the card game. I'll let you.
I thought you'd actually mistyped that in the show notes.
No, that's actually the name of the game. So I'll let you process that for a minute. So it's Board Games, the board game, the card game. So it is a card game, and the idea is that you are a games publishing company. So you're playing as a board game publisher, and you are publishing 12, I think it is 12 board games, and there are 3 sort of rows of these things. The top row is like your super heavy Euro, or he says sort of overly complicated, ridiculous games. I said I'm not going to take offence at that. Ridiculously sort of heavy Euro games. The sort of middle ones are your kind of your entry level, kind of most player sort of mid level games, and then your bottom ones are the sort of mass market pap that you don't think about. So, and the idea is that you're supposed to develop these things and then sort of score points that way. So I didn't play it, sadly, because it wasn't being demoed. I don't think it's quite ready yet. Some of the artwork's not finished. But I did say to him that actually, because some of them were literally just sort of hand sketches. And I said, you know what, it might be worth keeping some of them, because it just basically reflects the fact that the game is still in development. He's like, that's quite a good idea. There you go.
That would be £50, please.
Yes, there you go. I expect 10% of all royalties in future. No, so yes, no. I promised James that we'd give him a shout out, because obviously we've been pretty friendly in the past. So that's his new one coming out. I don't know when it's going to be out or kickstarted or anything like that. It's still in development, but just keep an eye out for that. So if you like lighter games, card games especially, that's probably one to look at. Rory was speaking to Hachette board games, and I kind of started speaking to them as well. This is Flavian, so one of their major. He's the guy who actually. Do you remember when we played Batman a few years ago, the board game where I basically pinned Catwoman to the floor via the medium of shotgun? Yes, him. So he demoed that. He remembered us. So we were talking to him for a while, and they've got a few really sort of. I mean, this is where Rory should sort of talk about the kids' games, because they have a load of really light kids' games that they produced, and apparently Rory's kids really enjoyed them. So I'll let him talk about those. But the games I was more interested in were the slightly heavier ones. A game called Iki, which I think was out in 2015, but they're redoing it. So it's based in Japan. Everything's made of paper, and part of the mechanic is there's a rondel in the middle, and you are doing things in the game. I forget the exact details, but because everything's made of paper, a fire can start. So you're basically building all this sort of little engine that you get, but if the fire gets out of control, you can lose everything. So you've got to take precautions. Yeah. So you've got to take precautions and make sure that you've either got a backup plan or things don't go your way. I think that's out later this year as the renewed version. So they've redone the artwork, tweaked a few of the mechanics, that kind of thing. So that's coming out as a re-release. That's Iki, I-K-I. There's a game called Daimyo, which is apparently post-apocalyptic, which is quite entertaining. So it's essentially rebuilding a Japanese empire. That's area control, slightly heavier stuff going on. You can buy the base box, which is just a bunch of tokens, or you can buy the additional box, which is full of really, really, really lovely miniatures. Guess what I'm going to be buying? That's out later this year as well. So that's a sort of post-apocalyptic area control game. And then they've got another game called Old Tree, which is going to be out later this year, which is very reminiscent of things like City of Kings or what else have we played that's like it? So it's kind of card-based storytelling with a kind of a choice on it. So a little bit of an element of maybe Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, choose which one you want to do. You've got to read it to the player and they've got to choose. Or Fallout, for example, it's got that bit. Maybe Too Many Bones, that kind of card-based adventuring with an outcome. So you've got to play as a player. It's cooperative. Apparently brutally hard, but it's fantasy setting, so you've got to sort of basically save the keep and make sure that everything's all well. That again is out later this year, around November, I believe. So they're aiming for Essen basically for most of these.
Yeah.
We saw Honey Badger, friends of the show, because they made that tasty chocolate game that you remember, and you got the Marmite one.
I distinctly remember that one, yeah, because I lost that one.
Yeah, we saw Honey Badger. They basically make food-based articles, mostly jellies in the shape of polyhedral dice. They've got a couple coming out now that are the rhubarb and custard one is particularly good, actually. Ooh. So she gave me a few samples of that. That's very, very nice. So they're doing very well. They were mobbed. I think they sold out pretty much on their first day, so she's very happy. But sadly, they're moving to Australia. I know. Okay. So her and her husband are moving, becoming Antipodean and going south. So I don't know if we'll ever see them again, which is a big shame, actually, because we always say hello and get some free scran out of them. That's always nice.
Well, I don't know. A Marmite flavoured chocky was a bit
not great. Yeah. But otherwise, their food's very nice. I did have a quick look at the Z-Man tables. We didn't get a demo, but most of the stuff there that we've already seen and we're very familiar of. I had a quick look at Stuff Fables Oh Brother, so that's the expansion to Stuff Fables. So it's basically more of the same with a few twists, so a few extra Gribblies, a couple of extra Big Bads, and a couple of extra toys. So one of them is like a kind of not He-Man. It looks so like He-Man, it's ridiculous. But because he's not a stuffed toy, he doesn't have any stuffing, so the mechanics for damage are slightly different there. So there's a little bit more mechanic going on, but they seem to do quite well. A lady called Karen Stallard, I think this is an independent publisher. We basically got collared by a lady sort of basically giving out lists. Do you want to play a game? Do you want to play a game? And to be honest, we had nothing better to do, so we couldn't really say no. A game called 20 Dreams, which is an interesting game. So essentially, you have a hand of. There's a pile of cards with essentially an image on it. You draw 3 of them out. And the idea is you're supposed to string a story together, so basically a dream, and then draw a random kind of emotion card. So I had a dream. It included the 3 elements that you've got, and it left me feeling, I don't know, annoyed, for example, or it left me feeling bleh. And everyone has to guess the bleh bit from the story that you tell. So right. If you get it right, you do well. If you get it wrong, you lose a point, for example. So it's most reminiscent of Dixit in that kind of sense, that everyone's got to guess which one you're referring to from the description that you give. But it's a lot lighter than Dixit, and it has a lot more storytelling in it. So as an RPG, obviously telling stories is something that we're all about.
Very different art style to Dixit as well.
Oh yes, very, very, very different.
Very simple, kind of like 3-colour, almost like black and white, and then coloured in, if that makes sense.
Yes,
that's,
yeah,
newspaper kind of or old comic kind of print.
Yeah, kind of Beano and Dandy sort of thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, but almost like pop art.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it.
Very simplistic, actually. I got to admit, looking at this game, this is not something I thought you'd like, Andy.
You'd be correct.
Surprised with this one.
It's not something we went to. We kind of played it. I mean, it wasn't bad. It's just not the sort of thing that we'd usually go for. I could see why they were doing. They've had a successful Kickstarter campaign, so fair play to them. I can't imagine it's very expensive. I think it's about £8 delivered or something in the UK, so it's not expensive. But not the sort of game we'd usually go for. But if you do like kind of interactive storytelling on the fly, so a bit kind of improvisational storytelling, basically, is essentially the name is the object of the game. So that's that game. But we did play it, so there you go. Not for us, but it was there. And I joked earlier, I think it was today or yesterday, with Sid and Steve when we were talking, just sort of between the few of us, that there were no heavy Euros at the expo this year. Very true. However, I did find one. And that was in the playtesting area. So there's always a sort of a series, a shower of red shirts who are running playtesting. So people are developing games. You are free to go along to help playtest games, to comment on them, to feedback, to see how they go, and provide designers and publishers feedback on how to improve their games and see how they fly. One of them was being playtested. I didn't playtest it myself, but it was a game called Journey to Borobudur. There's a mouthful for you. Apparently, it's set in Japan, but it's this massive, great Euro worker placement game, or at least Indonesia somewhere, that side of the world. There is a website for it, and a chap on Twitter who could provide you a lot more into information. So it's Nosy Wombat, at Nosy Wombat. if you want to go and look it up. Journey to Borobudur, there's a lot more information on there. The guy's actually designed a couple of other games as well, so they've been published by Vesuvius Media. So he's actually been fairly successful. His previous one was Pacific Rails. I don't know how well it did, but so it's not new, but it looks fantastic. So it's got a massive pyramid around the middle, so it's almost sort of Teotihuacan-esque with a little bit of a mix of Tawantinsuyu in there by the looks of things. So I don't know anything about it. I can't tell you any more than that. I just thought it looks bloody good. It's a worker placement. It's probably right up my street. But keep an eye on that. That's
I can't even find that on Board Game Geek.
I don't think it's there yet. As I say, it's still in playtesting.
Blimey.
If you Google it, you can find it, because Alora found a little bit of information for it earlier today.
Oh, right, okay.
But if you go to @NosyWombat, the guy is called Dean Morris. You'll probably find some more information on it there. But that was it. So that's pretty much a whistle-stop tour of the UK Games Expo and the stuff that I poked at, prodded at, liked, disliked. Talked about, chatted with. We did bump into a few listeners as well. They gave us some feedback, generally positive. A chap called Guy turns around and says, "Oh, too many RPGs and not enough board games." And his mate standing next to him said, "Yeah, not enough RPGs, too many board games." So you can't please everyone, but it was all in good fun. So it was nice to bump into a few people who listened. So that was fun as well.
Well, then, looks like that's all we've got time for. Then looks like you've, as you said, a whistle-stop tour of everything that was there. I was actually going to say, did you manage to see the new Descent, Journeys in the Dark? Or it's not called Journeys in the Dark, is it? It's called something else. It's called Descent Legends of the Dark. Did you manage to see that? Because I did see that was being demoed, but I know it's not a kind of thing Laura would like.
No,
I imagine she wasn't interested in it.
She's not a dungeon crawling fan, no. But no, I didn't see it. I think I did see it vaguely being demoed. There was like one table, and of course it was mobbed. But I didn't really go and see it, no, because it's sadly not a game that I would probably buy, as much as I'd probably enjoy playing it.
It's one of those ones I'm kind of intrigued by because it has an extremely hefty price tag. And I'm already hearing some very, very, very mixed reviews. Some people say it is amazing. Some people say it is definitely not worth the money.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, intriguing at this point. Yeah.
Interesting. That's the same feedback that I got from Colin, who demoed that demoed Red Rising. He said that's been very Marmite during the show.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people have really liked it. A lot of people have really not. So interesting.
There we go. Right then, we will be back soon with a normal episode. Because we know that, because we've already recorded it.
Yes.
So it might be a week or two before I finally edit it, but we have actually got one.
Yes.
So we won't do the usual spiel at the end, but suffice to say, we will be back soon. Come say hello to us at Player Drunk Collider all over the internet, Facebook, Twitter, Board Game Geek. You'll find us there.
Mm-hmm. We're a pretty big deal now.
Until then, tatty bye.
Ta-ra.